get back to it. All right, I didn't start it, but I did find it. All right, sorry about that. Again, getting back into the Zoom swing of things. Canary Islands, Spain is our first wine. Invinite, Benje. The Canary Islands is this beautiful, rugged coastline. You can see in this left picture, Mary Miller, shout out to an amazing slide deck. Thank you so much for all of the visual information that you put in here. So very, very rugged, very rocky. And that's very important because it's the reason that the wines from this region get such depth, such character, and such real complexity. Now, you've only got 2 ounces, so let's make it count. When you're tasting a wine, just to remind us all to get the most out of the tasting, make sure you swirl it around in your glass a good bit. What this is going to do is introduce air into the container, into the wine, bringing out more of the molecules, aromas. As the oxygen interacts with the wine, it will bring out more of the intensity of the wine. So make sure you're swirling it around. The smell is probably one of the most important parts, as those of you who had COVID and lost your sense of taste and smell know if you can't smell something, and those of you who have had colds know this as well, even if you didn't lose your taste and smell completely. If you can't smell something, it mutes the taste of it. Our olfactory senses are very, very connected together. So that sense of smell really is going to introduce it to your palate and start your memory, start the thinking process of what am I smelling? What am I tasting? And everybody's different, but we'll try to talk about some of the specifics. And then when you're drinking the wine, you don't have to do the weird slurping sound that I do. The reason for that is to bring more air into the tasting process. And then the important part is swishing it around. Kind of like Listerine. You want to get it into all of the different parts of your mouth because we have a lot of taste buds. They all pick up different sensations and they're all located in different parts of our palate. So getting it everywhere is very important. Switching it around for a good 10 seconds. And then when you finish, really savoring the flavor and thinking about what you're tasting in that flavor. So again, we're in the Canary Islands, really, really beautiful area, very rugged, very old vines as well. So a lot of these vines, especially that Invinite is doing, have been growing wild for a very, very long time, and nobody was cultivating them and nobody was getting the grapes from them because they were just kind of wild vines. These 4 friends, Roberto Santana, Alfonso Torrente, Laura Ramos, and Jose Martinez. I probably butchered a couple of those. I apologize. My pronunciations are terrible. They formed a winemaking consultancy that ended up evolving into this project Invinite. Invinite is really focused, as all of these producers are, on making very, very natural wines from start to finish. It's really all about the grapes and the raw product because as a natural winemaker, you don't have anything to hide behind. There's no fixing a mistake. There's no fixing bad grapes. You only can make this product as good as the raw grapes that you begin with are. So finding the most optimal grape source is the key to why these wines are so good and why these wines are so amazing. So they traveled all over the Canary Islands and northern Spain. They have some projects in northern Spain as well, looking for the best raw material, the best vineyards, biodynamically farmed, vines that are really old, and then making the best natural product from them. There's a limited release each year of these wines. They are very limited. Most of them we get 6 to 12, maybe 18 bottles a year of. Now that we have 2 locations, we're starting to get a little bit more of these allocations because we get a little bit for each store. So that has increased our ability to source some of these smaller production wines, but not a lot to go around, especially at the lower price point. These wines range anywhere from $33 at the entry level up into the 60s for the highest end, oldest vines, most limited bottlings. And so that lower tier under 40 is even less available than the higher tier, just because there's more people that want it. And that's the nature of these wines. Listan Negro is the name of the grape. It is also known in other parts of the world as the mission grape or Pais. Known as Pais in Central and South America, known as the mission grape in Central and North America. In Mexico, sometimes it's Pais, sometimes it's mission. In California, it's usually mission. And it has a very wild characteristic. I like to describe it as wild Pinot Noir. We have some other Pais wines in the store, namely from Chile. And it's really interesting to taste the different variations of Pais around the world next to each other. We get some mission wine in from California some years. We usually have some Pais from Chile somewhere in the room. And then this also is Pais from the Canary Islands, known as Listan Negro there locally. Really beautiful grape. You see the age of these vines. And I love the Listan Negro Pais Mission grape varietal. Again, this is Benjay Tinto. Old vines. Everything's hand harvested. Concrete tank, open tubs, natural fermentation. As with all these wines, maceration 10 to 20 days. So that's the amount of time the skins sit in the juice, picking up the color, picking up the complexity, picking up the extraction. Whew, man, that's beautiful. 40% into concrete tank, and then the remainder into neutral French barriques for the malolactic fermentation. So that's the secondary fermentation that almost all red wine goes through. A little bit of white wine goes through. With white wine specifically, that's what creates the butter characteristic in Chardonnay. Aging on the lees for 8 months, the dead yeast particles, the solids that are left over in the winemaking practice. No batonnage, which is where you punch down the skins to extract more tannin and more color out of them. Much more gentle winemaking process, which is why you have a gentle, elegant wine. No added SO2, so that's where you're getting a little bit of those barnyard aromas. Some people call it stinky. I like to just say it's delicious. Now, the wine doesn't smell like that, so don't let it scare you if you haven't encountered a wine like this before. A lot of natural wine can have that kind of barnyard, funky aroma to it, and it blows off with time as it opens up. If you bought a bottle of this, I would tell you to decant it for at least 30 minutes before you get into it, which is what kind of our swishing around helps with when we don't have a decanter for the little vials. The wine acts as our decanter, and so we kind of take our time with it a little bit. Forest floor, raspberries, wild herbs, really beautiful nose, very complex nose. Bottling without filtration, clarified using natural vegetable proteins, so it is vegan. And just, man, I again, such depth, such complexity. Wild Pinot Noir is what I like to refer to it as. And let's just enjoy it for a minute, and then we'll come back to it. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat function. Now's a great time. Spicy, smoky, almost like a raspberry smoked pepper. Not as much of the pepper, just more of the smoke. Man, very, very complex. A little bit of tannin on the back end. that goes away with time in the decanter. That also pairs really, really well with anything that's rich or fatty. So let's talk about pairings for just a second on this wine. Salmon would be a great pairing with this. Any wild game would be a great pairing with this. I'm thinking rabbit paella. I think would be absolutely fantastic. Brie cheese and other soft cheeses. Yeah, I love it. $37 a bottle. In the store right now, I think we've got 6 in Alpharetta. We've got maybe 9 in Canton. The Benjay Tinto from Invinite, Canary Islands. Let's get ready for number 2, Jean-Paul Brune. Love it. All right, so we're going to go from Canary Islands, Spain, over to Beaujolais in France. Sorry, I'm just still enjoying that last little sip of the Invinite. So this is Jean-Paul Brune, and this is Flurry. You can see in this graphic over here, we have the Beaujolais wine region, which sits just under Burgundy. It's actually a part of Burgundy. It is southern Burgundy technically, and just above the Rhone Valley. So if this map continued on down here, you go into the Rhone, northern Rhone, southern Rhone, and then into Provence down here, Minervois over here. So this is at the very southern of the cool climate regions for France. Beaujolais, known predominantly for Beaujolais Nouveau, which is released every year in November on Nouveau Day. It goes through carbonic maceration. It's meant to be drunk early. We get a lot of Nouveaux in here, although we don't get a lot from France here and there, but we get a lot of American and domestic Nouveaux and some Italian Nouveaux. It's a style that kind of has gone around the world now, not just limited to Beaujolais, but it started in Beaujolais. Now in Beaujolais, Gamay is the main grape. And in this region, there are Cru Beaujolais. And the graphic to the left here is all of the crus of Beaujolais. Saint-Amour, Julianas, Chenas, Moulin-à-Vent, Fleury, Chiroublé, Morgon, Rignier, Côte de Bruy, and Bruy. So those are the crus of Beaujolais. We almost always have a Cru Beaujolais somewhere in the store. We usually have an entry-level Gamay, not always, but usually have an entry-level Gamay, and then we usually have some Cru Beaujolais. We usually have some really cool single vineyard stuff from California and Oregon that is Gamay. We've always, not always, but we've got some great Division wine company, Bow and Arrow. So we've got a lot of Gamay throughout the room. And Gamay drinks like Pinot Noir. It's known as the poor man's Pinot Noir. And I'm getting ahead of myself because I need to finish this slide before I go to the Gamay slide. Fleury is one of Jean-Paul Brune's 2 largest Cru holdings. So he does a lot of wine from Fleury. 6 hectares in a very, very well-known part of this Cru, south-facing amphitheater, poor, sandy, decomposed granite soils over granite rock. Wine grapes make better wine when they struggle and they have very difficult growing conditions. So you saw the graphic of the Canary Islands, very difficult growing conditions. If you saw these vineyards, it isn't great soil. It isn't fertile soil. It isn't soil that you would plant a lot of things other than grapes in. And that's one of the vine superpowers, in my opinion, is that it really does well in poor soils and conditions. And it actually makes better wine when it's grown in those conditions. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jean-Paul Brune. We love his wines. We have a ton of his wines, and his Chardonnay is a cult favorite. His Rosé is dynamite. His entry-level Gamay we usually have in the room until we run out of it, the Lancienne. And then his Cru Beaujolais are super limited. We usually get 2 cases of this wine a year. Excuse me. That last sip went down the wrong pipe and then came up late. So love his wines. And he really is one of the leaders in the natural movement in Beaujolais. And there's a big natural movement in Beaujolais and has been for quite some time. It was one of the regions that was kind of ground zero at the beginning of this whole movement that we're a part of now, and is continuing to grow and is continuing to just gain momentum. He is a proponent of wild yeast fermentation. Go figure. Natural winemaking. For those of you who are new to this, wild yeast fermentation is where the yeast that are present in the vineyard and in the winemaking facility kickstart the fermentation naturally. So there's nothing added to these wines at the beginning to make them ferment. There's wild yeast everywhere around us. And in these vineyards, in these wineries, there are wild yeast present. You bring in the grapes into the winery, crush the grapes, stand back, and you let nature take its course. That's why we love wine. That's why I love wine. That's why the name of the store is Fermented, because it is such a beautiful process, and it is the only alcoholic beverage that can be made without human intervention. So most of the wines in our store are of natural fermentation. We have a couple that are commercial native yeast or commercial cultured yeast fermentations, and those are in the modern wine category. And for those of you who love native yeast fermentation wines, stick to the natural and the traditional categories on the walls as you're looking for wines that you're going to enjoy. At some point, we'll transition to only native yeast fermentation, native yeast fermented wines in Fermented. And the reason that we haven't gotten there yet is just because in that one specific category of wine, it's really hard to find native yeast fermented wines because the alcohol is too high for a natural fermentation. And a lot of people like higher alcohol wines, but that's a conversation for another day. I'm going on that rabbit trail. So his wines are a favorite among purists. Like us, love natural wines, love native yeast fermentation. There is a difference in the wines. They're more complex. They have more depth. They're more alive, if you will. And he started with just 4 hectares of vines and then began to acquire more. He has been a winemaker, vigneron for most of his adult life. And is really iconic. Anytime you see his wines in our store, you should get them because they're not always there. Gamay is known as poor man's Pinot Noir. And it is a natural crossing. So grapes can cross naturally, pollinate, mutate, all of these things in nature, which is another one of their superpowers. They can also be crossed in laboratories. On purpose, like the Pinotage grape. This is a natural crossing of Pinot Noir, and it tastes a lot like Pinot Noir. Known as poor man's Pinot Noir because it drinks like Pinot Noir and because the wines are usually less expensive from Beaujolais than they are from Burgundy, the neighbor to the north. Burgundy prices have gone crazy in the last 20 years because of scarcity, because of popularity. Now, because of climate change, it's very tough to find an entry-level Pinot Noir under $35. And here you get Cru Beaujolais for $35, which I think rivals most Pinot Noir in the $60 to $70 category, but that's my personal opinion. Let's get into it. Beautiful nose. More fruit on this nose than I got with Invinite up front. Love it, Patricia. Yeah, Beaujolais, one of my favorites as well. Ashley in the store, one of her favorites as well. We absolutely love this region and this producer. Outside of the native yeast fermentation, 3 to 4 weeks of maceration. So that's the skin contact. Oh, and that's got some weight to it for a Gamay. If we're comparing it to Pinot Noir, if we're comparing it to Burgundy, it's a big wine. It's a powerful wine. It's got some structure around the edges. It's not as delicate as some Pinot Noirs. It's not as delicate as some Gamays. And that is a result of vine age. It is a result of farming. And it is a result of that 3 to 4 week maceration process where you're getting all of that concentration, all of that power out of those grape skins. There's no oak on this wine. So all of those tannins are natural. Tannin is that drying sensation that you get on the back end of the wine as it sucks the moisture out. Some people like it, some people don't. As you see in most of my tastings, I like it. And I also like juicy, soft wines, but for some reason, the last 2 tastings when I've picked favorites, the wines have been more tannic than not. Now, again, some people like it, some people don't. So deciding where you are on that factor, very important. Also, tannins are great for aging wine. So both of these first 2 wines will age 10 to 15 years easily in a cellar and continue to get better and continue to evolve and continue to change. And it's also great for food, pairing it with rich. For this, there's a lot of different things that you could do. Steak, for sure. I almost want like a pizza with some Gruyere cheese and just steak on it with some caramelized onions, maybe some mushrooms. I think that would be amazing. Anything with mushrooms is going to be awesome with this. Lentil soup, absolutely. The vegetarian in the room, Miss Ashley, has spoken. And I would add some bacon to that lentil soup. But yes, it would be absolutely amazing with lentil soup. Escargot, yes. And Beaujolais is working man's Pinot, yes. Poor man's Burgundy. Yeah, right on with all of those comments. I agree and concur to them, and I want some escargot right now. I want some baked mushrooms. Man, we need to do dinner. We are going to do dinner February 20th, Restaurant Holmes. For those of you who haven't been to a fermented dinner yet, you need to come to a fermented dinner. Sorry, I thought that was a great time to plug our dinners coming up. We're going to do 1 a quarter. Restaurant Holmes is our preferred partner. We love working with them. Tickets are available online right now, 135 for non-members, 121 for our wine club members. And they're always amazing. Only 20 spots. We've already sold 5 and we haven't really announced it yet. So make sure if you're free on the 20th, I'm taking my wife as Valentine's Day dinner. You could do the same. Don't go out on Valentine's Day. It's going to be a shit show. Plus, we're not open. But we've got a bunch of events coming up the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, and the Sunday after for Valentine's Day. So keep that in mind. Check out the events coming out on social. If you haven't joined our email list, you need to join our email list. And this is the Jean-Paul Brune Flurry. I hope you like it. I'm loving it. Dark fruit, little earthy, not much, but just a little touch of like wet forest floor. Great complexity. Yeah. Dynamite. All right. So I'm going to go to this one first. No surprise, there's a Brock Cellars wine on my tasting. One of our most loved winemakers. All of these are our most loved winemakers, which is how they made it onto my favorite list. Man, we love Chris. We've had him on Zoom twice. He is a pioneer in the natural California wine movement. Started back in 2008, just as I was first getting into natural wines. And man, his stuff is just really beautiful, really pure, all over the place as far as style. He has kind of a style for everyone, all within the natural bucket. And we opened the store tasting his Love Red, and we have had many of his wines throughout the years. He does a lot of different bottlings. He does a lot of different varietals. He does a lot of different projects. He's a very busy man. I don't know if we're going to be able to get him for a wine tasting this year because he's kind of blown up in the last couple of years. He made it on a couple of New York Times top 10 lists. Really throughout COVID and the year after, well, I guess we're not out of COVID yet. Throughout the bulk of early COVID, he just kind of took off. Tough to find some of his wines right now. We do have still a few in the store. And this is his Perfect Red, one of my favorite wines every year. I always do a little happy dance when it comes in the store. We get 2 or 3 cases each vintage. Last year, I think we only got 2. This year, I think we got 4. We don't have a whole lot left. We do have a little bit at Canton. We do have a little bit at Alpharetta. Same with the Jean-Paul Brune Flurry, although I think we got the last case of that one, and we're down to about 6 bottles in each store, $35. This one's at 31, and it's the Perfect Red. Now, Chris Brockaway is a cool story because he actually doesn't own any vineyards. So he spans the bulk of California from Santa Barbara, which is going to be right down here, up to the North Coast, up into here, and really finds vineyard sites that are using little to no pesticides, farming organic or biodynamically in practice, if not certified. A lot of these little guys aren't getting certifications because certifications are expensive, because it's easier just to kind of do it than it is to have tests, as those of you who don't like school know. This guy, it's fun just to learn, just to do it, just to be authentic and not have to get tested around it. So if you're looking here, we've got some cool maps. This is Napa Valley. This is Sonoma County, or Solano. I'm sorry, not Sonoma. I can't read and look. So he gets a lot from down here in Green Valley, which is super cool. This is a little known wine region and is producing some really awesome fruit. You can see from the topography that it's very mountainous. You've got the mountain ranges on this side of Napa, which are some of the best fruit. You've got it here in Atlas Peak, which is super unique, and Howell Mountain. And then you have it down here in Green Valley and Suisun Valley as well. So again, looking for unique vineyards that are growing some really great grapes. You look at these vines, head trained, old vines, and pesticides. I don't think you've ever seen these vineyards. This is a project with a importer called Selection Massal. The grape is Cabernet Sauvignon. The blend changes just a little bit, so it's called the Perfect Red, and every year it's just a little bit different. Last year I think it had some Petit Verdot in it. This year it has Cabernet Rosé in it, so 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, the wine, but what he's doing is he's fermenting separately a little bit of Rosé and the regular Cabernet Sauvignon, and he folds in or blends in the Rosé to soften up the expression of the Cabernet. If you know Chris Brockaway's style, and every winemaker has a specific style. Chris Brockaway's style is elegance. And so he blends in the rosé to tame down the Cabernet Sauvignon to create a little bit more elegance. Some beautiful grape clusters there. Coming from the Worth Vineyard. Sweet fruit on the nose, a little bit of eucalyptus, a little bit of cassis, classic Cabernet, especially from Napa Valley. Flavor profiles. All right, chat function blew up on this one. It is a perfect red. Lots of people want a bottle. And gluten-free dinners. Yes, we can do gluten-free dinners. FYI, just give us a heads up. And Tanner, if you can go into the chat function and take down a list of everyone who wants a bottle. Stacy Craig wants one. Natalie Warner wants one. Patricia Durant wants one. Let's see. Am I missing anybody? Yeah, I love the nose for sure. Yep. And that is a perfect red. Yeah, every year, a little bit different, but always one of my favorite bottles. And I started to say this, but I don't think I ever finished it. It's a joint project with a importer called Selection Massal. Those of you who know the La Boutanche label, that is also a Selection Massal project. So this is another project they do right now with two winemakers that I've seen. There's the O Tinto Perfecto Clareto, which is the perfect red from Portugal, and then there's the perfect red from Brock Cellars. They're both dynamite. We don't have any of the Portugal right now. I think it may be coming. I could be wrong on that. I'll have to double check. But each year they put out one from Portugal, the perfect red, one from California, the perfect red, different winemakers. The California is Chris Brockaway. The oh shoot, I don't remember the name of the Portuguese Tinto Mateo. We're just going to say Mateo because I can't remember the other part of the name. All right. Yeah. Man, that's a delicious wine. I'm going to stay there for a little bit. Again, a little bit of tannin structure on the back end. Not as much as the last two. So actually the first two had a little bit more structure to them than this one does. All the boxes checked for natural, native yeast fermentation, little to no sulfites added at bottling, beautiful purity, depth, complexity. Man, that's why we love Chris. One of the many reasons. Makes some amazing wines. Oh, almost forgot this one. Great little bottle label as well. See if I missed anything. Lower bricks, always with Chris's wines. That's that elegant style. His wines generally clock under 13.5% alcohol. Yep, foot stomped on the rosé. 24 hours on the skins. Man, I don't want it to stop. I'm always sad when these wines go away and always really, really excited when they come back so I can taste the new vintage. I think as you get into natural wine and as you get into cellaring, that's one of the beauties of the journey. It's almost like a new release from a band. There's a style, there's a familiarity, but it's always different from year to year because Mother Nature plays a factor in the outcome of the final album. So you're a winemaker, you're working with a raw product. Every year, that raw product is going to be just a little bit different in its sugar levels and its acid levels, in the yeast that are alive that year and that vintage and that harvest. The heat when it spiked, when there was a drought, when there was rain, like all of those things. There's 1,000 things that factor into why a wine tastes how it does from year to year. And that's the beauty of getting into these wines, is they're just a little bit different every single year, but they're almost always amazing if you know the producer that they're coming from. So I'm sad to even have that last taste go away. I gotta buy a bottle for myself, stash it away. If you guys have the patience and you have the room to cellar, it really is worth picking up 6 to 12 bottles of your favorite wines every vintage, so that you can see how they evolve over time. That's the other beautiful part of this journey and of these producers, is their wines are going to age and age well. And you get to watch, it's almost like watching your kids grow up. Not quite, but you get to watch the wine change a little bit every year, every time you go back to a bottle. The ideal scenario would be to buy 12 bottles and drink one every 2 to 3 years. All right. We are going to finish in Italy. Surprise, surprise. Always one of my favorite regions of the world to drink from. And I'm an extremist. I like the North and I like the South. There's a lot of stuff that I like from the central part of Italy, but if I had to choose and what I'm drinking most of, it's either the islands or it's the North or it's the South. This happens to be from the North, and this is one of our all-time favorite winemakers as well, Elisabetta Foradori. We're in the very northern part of Italy right now, Alto Adige. It is located on the border of Austria. It is very rugged. It is very mountainous. It is just a beautiful, beautiful little area. Very cool climate, very rugged growing conditions. And there's some awesome wines coming from here. Elisabetta Foradori is amazing. At age 18, she took over her family's estate and converted everything to biodynamics, a farming practice that takes organic viticulture to the next level. The organic viticulture, biodynamic farming practice kind of evolved out of organic viticulture, and it also follows the cycles of the moon, completely holistic, ecological, and ethical approach to farming and winemaking, and completely self-sustainable. You don't need anything from the outside world. Everything that you need for farming is located on your land. So in a time when female winemakers were kind of shunned upon in northern Italy, she not only converted to biodynamic farming, which was not a common practice at the time. Everybody was using fertilizers. They had just come out with pesticides in farming, and that was the trend of the day, especially in these not so well-known wine regions. They were just trying to get the most grapes per acre that they possibly could to make the most wine that they possibly could. Elisabetta, as with most of these winemakers that we've featured in this winemaking or in this tasting, they are concerned more with quality than they are with quantity, but that's bucking the trend of the wineries around them at the time. As most of you know, bucking trends is not always the popular thing to do. But despite being a woman, despite taking over her family's estate at 18, and despite being in an agro-minded consciousness of the day of bulk versus of bulk in lieu of quality. She went against the grain and she was so successful with it. She's an amazing winemaker, an amazing person. She was at a wine dinner a couple years ago with us, and I can't wait to go over to Italy to see her property. You see the mountains in the background, the Dolomites, the terraced vineyards, just absolutely beautiful. Tyroluga is the traditional red grape of Trentino, known as Tyrol's gold back in the day, the Kingdom of Tyrol, black gold. These grapes were highly prized. I think it drinks a lot like Syrah, and there's a thought that it could be a relative of Syrah. Let's call it a cousin of Syrah. It has that deep kind of dark characteristic to it. Great structure, great flavor profile. And I love this grape. I love it, especially when it's coming from her. So she does a bunch of different Tyrolugas. She does a 1 day, 1 night fermented called Les Airs that we tasted last weekend at the Flight Club Takeover. Light, bright, fresh, juicy, kind of like a rosé, serve it chilled, really easy drinking. This one's a little bit more serious. Only 50,000 bottles are produced, cement tanks, 12 months in barrel and cement. And then she does some single vineyards that are up in the 50s, and then she does some higher end single vineyards that are up into the 90s. All very, very limited. She also does an amazing skin contact Pinot Grigio and Nasuela, which is a native white varietal from this region up in the Alto Adige. Dynamite little wine every single year, and again, a little bit different every single year. So pure, so much depth, so much complexity. A little bit darker fruit on this, not much, but just a little bit darker. Some blueberry. Patricia, we have curated a tour. We went to Willamette Valley in August. We were planning on going to Sicily again this spring, but I don't know that that's happening. I had to pull out personally. I don't know if the trip is still going forward because of everything that's going on right now. It's really hard going to foreign countries because deposits, hotels, getting refunds, especially at these smaller hotels. And so trying to book a trip 6 months out, not knowing what's coming with the state of the world and the coronavirus still, we kind of had to put the internationals on pause. I think we might be taking another one to California sometime this year. I work with a gentleman, Don Hackett, who takes trips and has been for the last several years. So look for those. Even if I'm not going, we'll promote them, and it'd be a great chance to go with him. And they are a ton of fun. But until you can go there, come buy the wines, drink the wines, transport yourself to these places by enjoying their wines. Man, just the depth, the complexity, again, the purity, the elegance. It's powerful, but it's light on its feet at the same time. This one actually has the least amount of tannin of all of the wines that we tasted in this tasting. And really, really just a beautiful little wine. Yum, 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 yum. That's the lineup. These are my favorite reds from 2021. Some of my favorite reds. You know, I've got a list that's 150, 200 bottles long. So whittling it down to the top 4 is difficult. These are the top 4 that are in the store and available right now. Although there's not a lot of them. We've got a few bottles left of this Tyroluga in Alpharetta and in Canton. We will run out of it, but then another vintage should be coming along the back end. The Benjay, we probably won't get another batch of that for another year. The Flurry from Jean-Paul Brune kind of comes and goes, but is limited in quantity. Lake Claret, this is it until the next vintage, which will be maybe in the fall. I'm not sure if this one's released twice a year, if this one's just released once a year. It's hard to keep up on exactly when the releases are. And then the Elizabeth Tyroluga, we usually have it for about 9 months out of the year. So of these, it may be the one that's around the most, although still very, very limited supply. Prices right there. Wine Club members 10% off. You can order online and put Zoom to get the additional 5% if you want to go to the store and order online, or you can pick it up in the store. I've got a list of 3 of you, I think, that wanted bottles. Patricia, Stacy, Natalie. If anybody else wants us to put something aside, let us know. And right now, I want to go through and find everybody's favorites. So if you don't mind putting your favorites into the chat function, I'm going to tally them up, and we're going to see what the most popular wine of the wine tasting was. Let me also get in there and make sure that I haven't missed any questions. Carmen also wants a Le Claret. Beautiful. Based on the pre-orders, I'm going to go ahead and guess which one I think is the favorite of today. That's usually a good signal, but not always the case. And then I've got to pick a favorite of my favorites, which is really, really hard. All right. I am looking at tallies. All right. Humphreys have already called Tanner. Excellent. Well done. That's a great thing to do as well. All right. So I'm going to tally up these real quick and see who our winner is. We've got 1, 2. We've got 1. All right, William, you got to interpret your tally here for me. Is that in order? 3, 4, 2, 1. So 3 is the favorite, and you both get to choose. So I should have 2 number favorites from you. All right, there's that one. And Carmen as well. Is that in order of least favorite to least favorite? Okay, and then there's another one from Will. All right, so boom, I'm interpreting these as I go, I think. Or did you have more people there? I don't know. Born between 2 and 3, yes. Favorite to least favorite. Beautiful. All right. So I was right, as you probably thought as well. Mr. Chris Brockaway, Le Claret, the Perfect Red, is the winner of this tasting. My personal favorite is the Invinite Benjay, but I was the only one to pick that. And I will say, with a smile on my face, that my favorite of the tasting is usually the least favorite of the tasting. And that's okay. I'm a little different. I like weird wines, but we have a lot of wines in the store for everybody. That's really what we aim to do, is to have something for everybody. And so every wine on the tasting had a favorite vote cast for it, which means that every wine found a friend and found a home. And that's why we do this. I want to thank you all again for being here. It's been amazing to share this with you once again. Look for these tastings once a month. We are going to try to do them hybrid like we talked about back in August. And we have our first one coming up the Saturday before Valentine's Day. It's a wine and chocolate pairing, and it's available for Alpharetta, for Canton, or for virtual. And the way that works is going to be, I'm going to cast just like this, and we're going to cast it into the store and have a moderator at the store helping you with the tasting as well. So if you want to do it from home, you can. If you want to go to Canton and hang out with some people, you can. If you want to go to Alpharetta and hang out with some people, you can. So just click on whichever option you want for that tasting and join us as we figure this thing out. And then we're going to start doing once a month the hybrid virtual and in-store tasting. We're also going to start doing a Flight Club takeover once a month, so look for those, where we bring in guests to pour our wines. We're going to have some other fun in-store tastings, and we're going to have a Wine 101 class that is also going to be done as kind of a hybrid in-store virtual tasting. So pay attention on Facebook, on Instagram, on the emails. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming up. We love you. We're glad to see you again. We thank you for all of your support. We thank you for caring about these wines. We thank you for caring about us. And we look forward to seeing you in the store. We look forward to seeing you online. We look forward to seeing you at tastings. And as always, thank you for being a part of this beautiful, beautiful journey that we're all on together. I'm going to make sure I didn't miss anything. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Awesome. Have a great rest of your night. Get to work safe tomorrow. And we'll see you next time. Have a great night.